And do we need a roll call, I guess, or
Yeah, I can start
Yes.
roll call.
please?
Signify by saying present, I or here. Co-chair Leung, co-chair Pun, vice chair Tanega,
Present.
Commissioner Bulling,
Present.
Commissioner Rajagopal,
Present.
Commissioner Akaraju, Commissioner Iglesias,
Present.
Commissioner Dirting,
Present.
Rep Wynn, Senator Dembro. Co-chair
Okay.
Leung has just joined.
Hi.
Thank you, Ava. Welcome, Co-Chair Leung. And before we begin, I do want to say congratulations to Co-Chair Leung at the women's. Now I forgot what it was called. I attended, and it was very informative. And you spoke so eloquently, and I was inspired. I had some goosebumps at sometimes, but yeah, there was a lot of powerhouse individuals on that webinar, and I hope to further that discussion. Hopefully there will be other opportunities in the near future, because I think it's very informative. And furthermore, I really hope that we get to collaborate with those other organizations that are out of state, because we to their point, we do similar work, and I think it's great to have that collaborativeness together. And I think that's I would love to see something like that. I know that there was a report that was for the other different commissions throughout the country, and very informative. If you got a chance to been there this morning, it was awesome. I didn't realize the other two panelists were at that high level. So kudos to you, Co-Chair Leung.
Thank you.
Who went to that, by the way, besides me? Director. Oh, Saba. Yes. Excellent. Yes. So hopefully there'll be other opportunities. So would you like me to defer this, Coach Leung? I don't have the agenda on me.
I just emailed it out about a half hour ago.
Oh.
But we do, Saba, you had in addition to you wanted to add something to the agenda?
Not add to the agenda. I just wanted to note with Co-Chair Leung here, by order of, I don't want to use seniority, but I guess you would be leading the meeting unless you wanted to defer to Vice Chair Tanega. I know that you had mentioned you weren't fully able to make the full meeting.
It might be easier instead of having to do this weird transition like what Co-Chair Fan and I've had to do, just for Vice Chair Tanega, if you're willing to just lead today's meeting, just to make things easier to suit these transition. And who knows, prepare you to be co-chair next year.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So, what I can't find that agenda. Does anyone have the agenda?
Yeah.
I can bump it back up to you.
Thank you.
And Director Saunders and myself, we're here to answer any sort of questions about process as well if you need.
Absolutely. So the first agenda item is the May 21st meeting and agenda approval.
We had a chance to take a look at that.
I dropped it into chat.
I don't think we can see it in the chat.
I'm not seeing it.
So Teams likely isn't going to allow you to drop in documents, mainly because there's external folks on it's the government security protocol stuff. So I'm going to have to be sent out via email. So I would recommend to skip this piece and move to public comment, which is the next agenda item, just for the sake of time.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Carl, and thank you, Director Saunders. So we'll move on to public comment. Is there anyone in the queue for public comment?
Nobody from the public in attendance.
Okay, great. So we're moving to our next item. Agenda item is our commission priorities. Dr. Carl.
Thank you, Vice Chair Shenega. I just wanted to provide just a little bit of context about what the other commission's priorities have recently, just so you have that context. And then there's one piece that does relate to the commission. So OCFW just discussed and voted their commission priorities on Friday, and they voted on and advocating for the implementation of the Pay Equity Act. Their second priority is working on domestic violence prevention and statewide coordination. And I'm going to put an asterisk by that because I'm going to come back to that. And then their third priority is working on childcare issues. With OCHA, they are working on permanent earned income tax credits. They're working on home buying pathways for I-10 holders, which also largely affects Asian Pacific Islander populations. Their third is decentralizing legal representation for immigrants. And their fourth priority is language justice in public meetings. For OCBA, they have three priorities. They're focusing on healthcare, education, and housing. So theirs are more kind of like topic specific. I do just want to mention around domestic violence prevention. Subcommittee, OCFW, while they have it voted on as an official priority, they really are open to sharing this work across with the joint subcommittee across the other organ advocacy commissions. And so this could be an opportunity. There's already been momentum and folks attending those kinds of subcommittee meetings. And so this would be an opportunity for you to all officially vote on that being some kind of a priority, even if it is like involvement in official capacity as a subcommittee. So just wanted to kind of give you that context of what the other commissions are doing.
Thank you, Dr. Mars. I appreciate that. And thank you, Silva, for including this in the chat. Just taking a look over here. Okay, great. So our commission priorities, and thank you to, and I did see that document from Commissioner Akkaraju and Commissioner Rajagopal and Commissioner Durting. I want to say thank you so much for all the hard work that you are doing. I'm so impressed by the level of depth and details, because there is no way that I mean, the last thing I've ever done in terms of details was back in college, and for us to see that kind of detail and for have that further advancement for us for OCAPIA, it's a wonderful thing. So, would we like to discuss? I'm not sure which one we want to discuss. I know that Commissioner Akkaraju had the interpreting services, and Commissioner Rajagopal, you had there was another one. If you can refresh my memory, Commissioner Rajagopal.
Yeah, and we can pull up Commissioner Akkaraju's document as well, but I believe that her priorities were around data and data collection. And so anyway, my priorities, which I sent to you all, there were some priorities that I consider more internal priorities that aren't very specifically related to one of those 7 statutory areas. And then there were 3 of the statutory areas that I think we should prioritize. And so the internal priorities, and I share 2 of these with Commissioner Durting and one with Commissioner Akkaraju, is data collection that is disaggregated as well, so that we have very specific information on all the subgroups within the AANHPI umbrella. A strategic plan for our commission, and I'll just add what I didn't send is just my perception has been that the way that we selected priorities has largely been based on individual values alignment with a particular provision or initiative, And I do think we need a cohesive vision so that we just are a little bit more, we can set some guardrails on all the work we want to do given our capacity and bandwidth. I also think a strategic plan will help us with decision-making processes that center equity, will help us with a bunch of things. So that was the other internal one, and the last internal-ish is just having some goals for all of us to do some more community engagement and data gathering in our different regions in a little bit of a more formal way. Being part of the EJ Council, they're engaging Oregonians in a number of listening sessions, and I felt like something like that would be really helpful for us to really get a little bit more of an idea of who all the communities are outside of the Portland metro area, which I know has been, there's like just a lot more information there. So those were the internal ones. The external priorities I have listed by priority area, and then with a couple of examples of what we could do within those priority areas. So education was number one. And the specific example that I provided there was just anything that addresses the disproportional graduation rates and attendance rates for Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Oregonians. And this aligns with one of Governor Kotek's priorities of education. Civic engagement was the second one. And under civic engagement, I mentioned a specific priority around translation. And given that language justice is an OCHEP priority, I feel like there might be some kind of alignment we could do there around language and language access. The last priority I had, a priority area I think I listed was jobs in the economy, which aligns with Commissioner Durding's email as well. And very specifically, and this was some data gathering and initial inquiries to COVID, knowing that a very small percentage of government awards currently go to minority-owned businesses. And so those were the three big commitment areas. And I'll just end with that. I'm not very attached to the very specific ideas that I shared in each of those commitment areas, but I would like to prioritize work in those three commitment areas of our statutory obligations. So I think everything else is in what the document I shared. So I will stop talking. Thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Gopal, excuse me. Saba, I recognize you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to give a little bit of a context about just some of the email conversations as well. And thank you, Terrence, for putting some of the priorities mentioned at the last meeting in the chat as well. So I just wanted to note that I have seen a process that with the other commissioners is everyone sort of names similarly to what Commissioner Rajagopal just did, names their priorities, and then you all get a chance to do that, and then collectively you vote on 3, 4, 5, how many ever you feel might be within your capacity to take on. Our agency suggestion is that we would really appreciate you voting for things that you actively want to participate in, because it's great to have education as a priority, but it's also a little bit difficult to focus on that if we don't have commissioners committed to that. That being said, I have also, Commissioner Akaraju has graciously put her priorities in writing, and I volunteered to present those on her behalf. I will not be able to argue in favor or against, but I do want to make sure I dropped the Trello link in the chat for collecting all of that information. Hi, I don't know who that extra guest is, Commissioner Leung, but hello. Awesome. I just wanted to say that, so I will, whenever we are ready to hear Commissioner Akaraju's priorities, I'm more than happy to go over those. Or if you've already reviewed the email, there's no need for me to. We can save ourselves some time.
Well, how does everyone feel about Saba kind of summarizing it up? Or do we need to, or should we move on? I know Director Saunders, you got your hand up.
Thank you, Vice Chair Tanega. My hand was only up to recommend no more than 5 priorities. I would say 3 would be the sweet spot. Also to think about governor's priorities around those 3 areas as well. That would likely have the most movement from the governor's standpoint in this next long session. So just thinking about that while determining priorities. But not limited to those priorities. I want to be very clear on that.
Thank you. Commissioner Iglesias, I recognize you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think since we read one of our priorities, we ought to read the other priorities. I agree. I just saw somebody's comment pop up in the chat, so that we could put it on record that we have both, and then we could consider all of those as a whole. That just makes the most sense to me.
Absolutely. Commissioner Akaraju did provide a document with some extensive research as well as a number of really great sources. So I won't go into depth on those specifically, but really highlighting how Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities in Oregon, and quite honestly, a number of other states, are heterogeneous and representing a wide range of ethnicities, cultures, languages, and lived experiences. And so, as we heard from the panel this morning, there are over 6 million AA and HPI communities in California, and it is one of the largest growing communities across the country. Oregon has a growing population as well. Unfortunately, the data collection part lumps everyone into one little chunk of AA and HPI. This is particularly prominent in health data as well as education. And so Commissioner Akaraju would specifically like to focus on disaggregating data as well as prioritizing robust data collection. She does note that both California and Washington have a pretty exemplary legislation in place that we might be able to review and maybe not reinvent the wheel, maybe bring some of those practices over here. And her call to action is advancing data equity for Oregon's AA and HPI communities, emulating best practices. So following the lead of states like California and Washington by developing legislative measures that prioritize robust desegregation data collection on Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders, and community investment, engaging affected AA and HPI communities and organizations early in the policy development rather than the end. And we heard that kind of in the panel this morning as well, making sure that folks' community voices are represented, sustain this engagement throughout to ensure equitable outcomes. So kind of naming that out loud, that community input has been a part of our discussion with OCAPIA for the last year or so. And so we're trying to be more active in engaging the community and making sure that the decisions made on behalf of the community are for and by the community. So we've done some listening sessions in within OACO here last year. We haven't in the last about year or so, but that is a great way to do it. I do want to name that that partially does come with a little bit of a travel budget. And so if it's virtual, it's even better. It's a lot more easier for us to be able to accommodate some of those costs, but in person, of course, yields a much more personable response, more community engagement, and I think it just also gets us away from Portland Central. So I'll pause there. I do see Coach Leung's hand is up.
I recognize you, Coach
Thank you.
Leung. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm looking at the priorities, and these are actually some of the things that their MIC is currently working on, or also something that the governor has supporting. For example, like all these are all great ideas, but we can't do any of this if we don't have the data. So if anything, it makes sense to me logically that data disaggregation should go first. It's a priority item. But we also, again, don't want to be reinventing the wheel because, for example, at least on Oregon Health Authority and for some of the public health data collection through the public health data modernization that's currently taking place that MIC is part of. We're working in coalition with the Oregon Pacific Islander Coalition on ensuring that data, at least for Pacific Islanders, is broken down by, and Native Hawaiians is broken down by each of the different groups. So when you see the some of the more internal, I guess, COVID data, or even the OHP, has anyone looked at the OHP data that's already been now posted, that actually breaks it down by what race ethnicity group based on what people have reported. Again, there's some issues with that because, again, self-reporting or somebody is completing the application for them, we've encountered experiences where those individuals were either marked as I had a few where there were somehow or another people who were Indian or from specifically who identified as Indian but spoke Punjabi, were listed as Pacific Islander, and we had to like update some of the data on our end because we were given a list to call people and update their information. So I think I would think that data segregation makes sense as the first priority piece. And some of the things that we also talked about during our panel was language access. That's been an ongoing thing that's been with the state for so many years now. And even when they updated their healthcare interpreter training, we're adding additional requirements, actually resulted in some additional barriers for individuals who were healthcare interpreters before some of this new implementation took place. The other piece, and I know this is a governor's priority, is unsheltered homelessness, stable families, and housing. And even the experience of getting into affordable housing, it is a mess. It's something that, again, MIC is currently working on. And like right now we have meetings with the city, meetings with the state, trying to figure out the funding. But before we could even break ground, we have to somehow or another come up with about $700,000 to be able to break ground. And so we've been trying to identify some potential lenders who'd be willing to fund us. But then the drawback with that is if you're a small organization and your budget is not like more than $5 million, it's tough to find anyone who's willing to put down that earnest money. And we also have tax credits that we just got approved of from the state to be able to help buy some of this investment. And a lot of them have asked questions and red taping us. So we're experiencing some significant barriers still with that. And the other key piece, just looking at this list, if we had to choose another one, I'm eyeing the childcare one. So again, that's something that MST is also involved in. And to be honest with you, I'm thinking of both childcare deserts throughout the entire state, but also the affordability aspect of talking about childcare. I do have a partner. They're not Islander. They're actually, I think, from the Latinx community. They have started a 24-hour childcare program that officially starts in June, but it is a wait list now, and they will be opening up next month. Those are just some examples of the work that we're seeing. Let's see. Is there data on impacts? I think there is. I don't think it's like actually stated in any particular one category. It's based by each county, because each county has its own point in time count. Then they have to submit those, and the state has its own more basic one. But again, I don't think they've broken it down by each of the categories. That's something I'm at least working on in Marion Polk County to make sure that when we're collecting this data and this information that is really available. But let me take a look to see if I could find those reports and add that right there. Unless Saba, oh, okay. Saba has a little something. But also I work with some realtors who are helping us with the community build. And they have some data specifically at the realtor level that shows how many people, specifically Pacific Islander, are actually homeowners within the state. And it is abysmal. It's pretty low already for if you have to lump together both Asian and Pacific Islanders, but when you actually separate the limited data that's available, Pacific Islanders is even lower than the American community.
Thank you, Co-Chair Leon. I agree. The data is important. It pretty much would lay the foundation to and kind of bleed into everything else that we're trying to prioritize here. And I do want to recognize, and thank you again. I do want to recognize Commissioner Dirty and Commissioner Bulling for the COVID information. And I know that I kind of did a minor contribution with what you had. It was just off the top of my head. Was there something missing? But if you can please elaborate.
Yes, great. So also I just real quickly wanted to piggyback off of the data conversation that I am a member of the REALD and SOGI community work group that's going to start meeting, I think, at the end of this month or early next month. And that's REALD is racial, ethnicity, language, and disability, and SOGI is sexual orientation or gender identity communities. And so the Oregon Health Authority, OHA, is convening this work group, and the purpose of the group is to provide feedback to OHA and serve as a liaison from communities most impacted by health inequities. and then provide guidance and advice on the technical aspects of the data collection and analysis, and develop and support collaborative research and data projects between community-based organization researchers and the OHA, REALD and SOGI or SOGI section, and then improve the capacity of communities to do data justice. So I'll keep the group posted as I meet with this work group. And then with regards to COVID, if you didn't get a chance to meet, to be part of the meeting last time, we were introducing the need for modernization, and we increased awareness about the disparities with the disparity study with the state of Oregon's procurement and the access that Asian Pacific Islanders have. We currently get 1% out of what was it, 3 point something billion. You'll have to forgive me, I wasn't ready to recap that, but we basically drafted a letter of inquiry to Business Oregon with a request to determine where they are at today. So we're not creating any, sorry, we're not creating any steps right now. We're just inquiring, are they at a point where they're also aware of the issues that we're hearing, the feedback we're receiving, and then to find out where they're at today to see how we could be able to be of assistance to them. And we shared that letter with everybody via email. Did everybody get a chance to read it by chance? Yep. So that was one of the things that we were requesting to also prioritize. In terms of the priorities, I align with everybody pretty much here, and what, specifically strategic plan. I feel like if we had a strategic plan, all of these things that we're talking about would be included in a strategic plan. And it's foundational. It's going to be great for structure and efficiency and proactive approach. It's a roadmap that aligns all of us to work together towards the same North Star, and it would be not biased, and it would be something that we created together. And I shared with you the ones that other state agencies have, other state commissioners have. It would be great if we had something like that, big picture, long term. In the meantime, since we don't have one, the OCAPIA priorities that I propose would be to align with the governor's priorities. For her 3 priorities is 1, housing and homelessness, 2 is behavioral health, and 3 is education and early learning. And then the second priority that I would propose we align with is our own statutory priorities. There's 7, and I'm not attached to these as well. But if I were to pick, I would pick my top 3 would be jobs and economy, and that's where the COVID letter falls under. Stable families and housing, since we are in a housing and houselessness crisis, and civic engagement. I know it's a little, we're still a few months before election, but with the language barrier, increasing awareness, getting people out there to vote, but not only that, to see if how can we get people, Asian Pacific Islanders, on the ballot, to be elected as officials. And then with regards to tools, it would, priority as well as data. And I want to distinguish that even if it's not a priority, like data is important. Like, for example, all of us, we've had different agencies, different organizations have strategic plan or priorities, but homelessness hit, and we didn't have that as a priority, but then we also still needed data for that. So I feel like data is important, number 1, as a tool, regardless of priority. And then communication and engagement, and of course, funding and the Rubik decision-making process, and then also leveraging resources from other agencies like the governor's office, League of Oregon Cities, in terms of research, messaging. If we're providing testimony, leveraging other drafted letters already, and maybe just customizing it for us. And these stem from me reading through that spreadsheet with like 100 bills for our short session. I can't even imagine how much more there will be for 2025. So if we could prioritize those and label those to say, here's our statutory priorities, here's the governor's priorities. And then I also would like to prioritize local priorities because it's different, like, you know, for Portland versus Madras rural farm area, or even urban areas in Central Oregon like Bend versus, you know, Portland or Salem. And I think it's very important for us to raise all those differences to the governor or the legislative body to let them know, because what usually happens is the bill passes, and then when the money's getting distributed, different cities or agencies that are receiving it or nonprofit organizations are like, oh, this doesn't fit for me, so I can't qualify for this. So I think it's important on the front end that we have representation at local levels or different levels, since we have such a diverse group of communities throughout Central Oregon, throughout Oregon. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dutzing. Commissioner Bowling, did you want to add to Commissioner Dutzing?
Sure. I think really just on COVID as well, that's definitely a big concern for me. You know, I think as Commissioner Durting identified, there are some massive gaping holes within Business Oregon right now in regards to staffing for COVID because of COVID. And I would really like to see that addressed. I do have some serious concerns about how much of contracts are allocated to COVID businesses because they just simply don't simply don't exist at this point in some areas. And we already are passing policy that allocates certain percentage of contracts need to go to COVID certified contractors. And, you know, specifically for construction, that's 24% of ODOT projects right now. And I mean, that is hundreds of millions of dollars. And I think we need to be really careful about how we implement that and how we roll that out.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
So I apologize earlier, I didn't have this information, but just for those that are watching this later and they weren't part of the previous meeting and or of the email exchange, but the letter is really to Director Chiang from Business Oregon, increasing awareness about the our role as OCAPIA to providing let's see here. We are to identify barriers to the economic development and trade opportunities of Asia Pacific Islanders within the state and advise agencies and officials on issues related to those barriers. We're also tasked to assess all programs of state agencies operating for the benefit of equity for Asian and Pacific Islander American residents of the state and make recommendations to the appropriate agencies for the improvement of those programs. So given our statute, we were bringing these reports and feedback of barriers to certification to their attention and respectfully requesting Business Oregon to respond with an update on its plans for mitigation and modernization, if any, and then to let us know if they're facing any barriers and if they have any needs that we could provide support and assistance in any way. And I'm not sure if this, you know, if we needed to include this letter publicly to post it on the website as well so the public could see it.
Thank you to Commissioner Durting. Thank you, Commissioner Bowling.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Saba. Go ahead.
Thank you, Vice Chair Tanega. I wanted to offer one slight clarification on what Commissioner Durting mentioned, which was the statutory priority areas. I wanted to clarify that the statutory priority areas are social, legal, political, and economic equity within AA and HPI communities. The seven priority areas listed, jobs and economy, education, whatnot, those are strategic, not statutory. Just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I see Terrence has something to add there.
Thank you, Saba. Go ahead, Director Saunders.
Yeah, so currently there is a statute identifying barriers to the economic development and trade opportunities of Asian and Pacific Islander Americans within the state, and advise state agencies and officials on issues related to those barriers. So if you recall, we were talking about that on Monday for the statute standardization piece. That's going to be something separate from this current conversation that we're getting into. So it currently is in there in the statute right now. I have a slightly different take that I want to bring up. So I just want to recommend focusing on statewide issues. Yes, there's a lot of issues happening at the local level, but this is a state commission. So I just want to be pretty clear in that regard. I also heard a ton of priorities from a bunch of commissioners. So just focusing on no more than 5 priority areas before the voting starts, just making sure we're nailing that down. And then just a little bit of clarity for Commissioner Dirting around the legislative session. So there were like 120 bills that we were tracking at the agency level for all 4 of the commissions. All of those weren't priority for OCAPIA. So just want to call that piece out. Ideally, going into a long session may have a similar process, but it would be easier to pick out the bills of priority based off of each commission's priority areas. And that did not necessarily exist for all 4 commissions. So I picked everything that was related to racial equity or gender, and I threw that into that list. So just want to provide a little bit of context to that. I'm also going to recommend, Vice Chair Tanega, if it may be appropriate for a vote, as we are about 18 minutes out from time.
Thank you, Director Saunders. So I believe then we shall take a vote on these priorities. There's a lot and more that were added. Director Saunders, what would you suggest? I would just go down the list.
Absolutely. I would start with the priority areas that were mentioned in this meeting. So data disaggregation, would definitely start there. And then COVID process, I would bring that up second and just continue to go down that list.
Okay.
I do want to
Alright.
know, Commissioner Snega, that all of the votes need to be on record for the purposes of a public meeting. And as Director Saunders mentioned, no more than 5. So if you could take a moment to kind of review the list, there's obvious themes across all of them. That would be really helpful. So maybe limit your priority areas to 3 to 5 votes total.
Okay. Commissioner Rajagopal.
I just have a question as to when you say the list, there's a list from the last meeting, and then there's a list of priority areas that we all just talked about now. Is there an updated list we should all be looking at before we vote? Was someone taking notes as we were all talking? And if not, should we take a minute and synthesize everything into a concrete list for us to consider?
Yeah, what I was tracking was data 1, COVID, but that a strategic plan, and then the statutory, but now we're learning it's strategic priorities and are different votes for those. And then what would be the 5th?
I heard, within the strategic priorities, I heard housing and homelessness.
Education seems to be a big thing.
Civic engagement, as it relates to translation. I think that's everything that I have in mind.
That's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm getting, but I don't know.
Director Saunders just dropped a list in the chat for everyone to review.
Data, codes. Oh, sorry, I'll mute myself.
No worries. I did not drop anything into the chat yet. Kyle dropped a great list in the chat.
Just now?
Correct, just now. My computer's been freezing, so she beat me to it.
244.
So in the governor's priorities, education, under education, childcare falls under that. Would we want to put those two together, or are they two separate? Because I see co-chair Leong's childcare priority.
I would recommend it being one priority area. They overlap.
Go ahead, Commissioner Rajagopal.
Oh, I'm sorry
The
that I
hands
did
up.
not raise my
The
hand.
hands
I think it just recognized my hand because I was holding my hand like this. So put it back down.
A question for Saba. So I need to do a formal like motion for each one or just?
So you do have approval by unanimous consent. So yes, motion for each one, and unless there's opposition, that would pass.
Okay, so thank you.
Oh,
Go ahead,
I
go
think-
ahead, Ava.
I apologize for barging in on this. Please keep in mind, I do need to record the vote, so if you could just be a little patient with me while I take it down. Thank you.
meaning one that.
So maybe if we raise our hands when we vote, that way I could give her a chance to look at it and take her time with it. I am so on board with keeping it to 3 to 4 priorities rather than even having 5. I feel like every year we get so excited about all our priorities and we end up having, like any business, too many priorities that we can't possibly support. And I really would like to narrow it down. I'd rather be really good at 1 or 2 of the priorities all year than have 5 or 6 or 7 priorities and not be good at any one of them. And that's just my suggestion is.
No, I appreciate that, Commissioner Iglesias. I would be in agreement.
Yeah, example. I'm not being critical.
There's a lot of great priorities, and I know that folks here are passionate with their priorities. But to your point, Commissioner Iglesias, you're right. I mean, if we spread ourselves too thin, then I think the impact is kind of diminishes somewhat. Let's see. Okay, so I guess we're gonna start with this at 2:44. The interpreting services. So, do I have a motion for the interpretive services to be part of the priority? I just lost my train of thought. It's just-
What does that one come under?
the interpreting services. I'm looking at that from Dr. Meyer's list. Director Saunders. You had your
Yeah,
hand
so
up?
I'm gonna jump in, and I have a somewhat refined list, so I'm gonna drop that into the chat, and maybe that might be easier because I did summarize them into like just topics. So I'm gonna suggest using that. And it may be good if there is a need for clarification, just to open that up for discussion, and folks can chime in with additional details for a more informed vote.
I don't see strategic plan in there. Should we include that? Okay, there we go. Thank you.
So I would recommend the strategic plan incorporates all of these priorities. What I'm getting out of the strategic plan up above is like, those are the governor priorities. So I just listed them out individually instead of having it all under one realm. Mainly because if you have that as one priority, that's going to take up the whole biennium. And I don't know if that is a priority, but I would just recommend breaking that up into three areas, just like the governor did.
Okay, so let's see. And thank you, Director Saunders, for this list. Is there a motion to have data disaggregation and collection as one of the priorities?
This is Commissioner Rajagopal. I move to have it included as a priority.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Any nays? Abstain? Eva, did you get the votes?
Yes, I did. I have Durding, Tenega, and Leung voting for data disaggregation and collection.
I voted as well.
Oh, I apologize, I did not see it. Thank you.
Bowling also voted yes.
Thank you.
I think that was unanimous. I think, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, motion has passed for data disaggregation and collection as a priority. Okay, moving on to COVID modernization disparity study. Is there a motion to have COVID modernization disparity study as a priority?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I would.
And that's unanimous.
Happy
Thank you.
dance. Thanks.
Okay, motion has passed. Thank you very much. Oh, no nays. Okay. Moving on to number 3, housing houselessness. Is there a motion for the housing houselessness to be a priority?
I make a motion. This is Co-Chair Leung.
Can I just ask
Okay,
a question?
motion for that housing houselessness. Is there a second?
Oh, sorry. I think Commissioner Iglesias has a question.
I'd like to understand what we're voting on here, because this one is such a big issue everywhere. Everybody has a priority. I don't know how we're gonna support that effectively, because it's so dang big and everybody has got that at the top of their list. I just like to ask what exactly about housing and houselessness are we supporting?
Oh, you're on mute, or you?
Jackie, are you saying something? Because I see your mouth moving, but we don't hear anything.
No, sorry, I was talking to somebody in the background.
Oh.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, how it's a priority for everybody else and they're working on it independently. And then what I could see how this could be a priority for us is if there's bills regarding this item, regarding housing or houselessness, and we could provide testimony for it. But I'm not attached to having it be a standalone priority. It's something that we could support. Is that what I could see?
Yeah, I'm just not confident that we as an agent, as a commission, can do anything. Honestly, I mean, I don't know if I'm making any sense there.
No, that makes sense. But what I guess where I would be coming from in terms of where we could advocate, especially we're talking about the Oregon, I'm going to forget the abbreviation, OVHS, Oregon Community Housing Services. I think that's the abbreviation for that specific division within the state. They're the ones who provides the funding at this moment, supposedly to encourage small developers or even cultural specific organizations to provide to apply for funding that would be able to help those smaller entities such as mine to be able to get into affordable housing, to provide affordable housing for our community. Some of the barriers that we're experiencing right now to be able to even get that funding is the actual process of applying. It's not a simplified process. It's multiple meetings on meetings. There's a delay. We were actually applied for this funding, for example, last summer. We were supposed to be notified in the fall. We didn't get notified until about a month ago that we finally got the funding. And then that started the ball rolling, but then we need to now somehow or another, again, come up with that about $700,000 before we can actually, the permits and all those other key pieces required before we are even allowed to break ground. And we're on a time clock to be able to get this program going and the funding out there, because our funding that we're getting from the state even expires if we don't get the funding to be able to invest in build.
And then for me, it's a couple of things. One is for the data. Usually we don't have data on housing and houselessness for Asian Pacific Islanders. So we're disproportionately impacted. We're undercounted. Usually you have a lot of people living in one household. And people just defer to like, oh, it's a cultural thing, but really it's also an economical thing. And then the second thing is what I could see where we could actually support also is having equitable prioritization for Asian Pacific Islanders when it comes to placement in affordable housing and also in shelters or receiving services or funding for houselessness programs, preventative or, people at risk or people experiencing it. So those are the two things top of mind for me, in addition to Commissioner or Co-Chair Leong.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think Chair recognizes Director Saunders.
Yeah, I just want to mention that you're able to support any legislation that the commission sees appropriate in a legislative session. So having it as a priority isn't going to sway that opportunity one way or another. I do just want to clarify that piece, but I appreciate this conversation. Also recognizing there's 2 minutes left, so there may need to be a motion to extend the meeting, let's say like 15 minutes if folks are able to stay on. We still need quorum to vote on those priorities, and I see head shaking no, so I'm gonna shush it, and you may want to do a vote for this priority. And
Okay, so let's move then to, is there a motion for housing and houselessness as a priority?
So Co-Chair Leong said she motioned, and I'm happy to second.
All in favor, say aye, raise your hand.
I don't see Commissioner Bowling, and he's on mute, so I'm not sure if he's voting.
Ava, do you have the votes?
I have Leung and Tanega. And I don't see any other hands. And Durden.
Is Commissioner Bowling? Okay.
I'm not voting.
Oh, okay, got it.
Any nays? Please raise your hand for nays. Okay.
Ava, would it
Abstain?
help if I said it out loud while you're typing? I see
Yes,
you're
that
working
would
on
be
this.
really helpful.
I'm happy to do that, yeah.
Thank you.
We've got nays from Commissioner Iglesias as well as Bowling, and Commissioner Roger Gopal is abstaining.
Thank you.
So what does that look like right now, the numbers?
3 yes, 2 no, 1 abstention.
So this motion passes?
No.
No.
No. Also recognizing quorum is no longer here at the meeting, so I just want to unfortunately call that piece out. So as of right now, there are 2 priority areas, which is definitely a lot of progress. So I want to recognize that and appreciate that. But we may need to table the rest of the conversation for priorities until there's quorum, or schedule another meeting to discuss the rest of the list.
I like this. Thank you, Director Saunders. I like this discussion. I think it's very important. And to Commissioner Iglesias brought that up with the house systems. I appreciate that because that's a huge undertaking.
Yes.
And I think further discussion is warranted for the other.
So for next steps, Vice Chair Tanega, would you prefer to do a follow-up priorities meeting to have a vote on the remaining 9 listed, or would you like to bump that to the next OCAPIA meeting?
When is the next OCAPIA meeting?
July 12th.
That would July 12th.
Sorry.
I think I would prefer before that because it's important. And I don't want to remain complacent, and I want some forward movement on this. So that would be my recommendation, my suggestion, would to have another meeting prior to the OCAPIA meeting.
Excellent. I can send around a poll. I just wanted to note that we have our legislative days next week and 2 other commissioner meetings in the first half of June. So we might be looking at mid-June for that reason. I just wanted to say that out loud.
Thank you, Saba. Director Saunders.
Absolutely. I was going to say very similar information, but I do think, again, there's opportunity to talk around the 2 priority areas that were determined today with legislators. So I just want to mention that as Ledge Days is going to be next week, and we hope to see you all there and fully engaged.
Thank you, Director Saunders. Chair recognizes Commissioner Rajagopal.
Oh, just really quick, I'm curious, given that we did vote on those 2 priorities, can we now create subcommittees to begin to work around it, or does there need to be a formal decision? Like, for example, with the COVID letter, can Commissioners Durding, Bulling, and I continue the process? Or do we need to wait?
My suggestion, Commissioner, is that since it was approved by quorum, that we move forward with it and not delay on that one. And if you would feel comfortable getting creating transparency and awareness, maybe send an email out to everybody, letting them know what you're doing.
And I think, yeah, Commissioner Akaraja would probably also appreciate knowing the data disaggregation passed, and I believe she would be very interested in creating a subcommittee around that. So
great.
I might need to check bylaws specifically on the committees. I believe that they are appointed by the co-chairs, but I will check on that, and I can circle back with you, Commissioner Akaraja, to move that forward.
Commissioner Rajagopal, you have a question? Okay, any further questions, comments? I do appreciate all your help and insight. It's very valuable. Great job, all of you, OACO staff. Fantastic work. I know it's almost seems insurmountable, but I think we're making some progress, incremental progress. So that's a plus. So if there's no, whoops, hold on. What is Commissioner Bulling? Just typing something. Okay. Thank you, Director Saunders. And Commissioner Bulling is typing something. I don't want to end just yet.
I was just going to say I need to go to another meeting, but if you're leaving, then I don't need
All
to
right,
type.
yes, thank you. This is for the good of order. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, look forward to that poll. Thank you, Saba.
Good seeing you all.
Thank you.